Okay, so we were just talking earlier about this little town in Texas. I believe it's Harold, Texas, 150 miles northwest of Fort Worth. Hey, the teachers are now going to be packing heat. Back in October, the school board, I think unanimously said this is a good idea because they feel this school could be a target because they're out in the middle of nowhere, and they at least believe that it's safer to have teachers with guns than without.
Well, think about it. Here's this town that is 30 miles, or the school is 30 minutes away from the local sheriff. And if something happened, God forbid, and the school itself is just off of 287 right there, about 500 feet from 287. So they worry that some crazy passerby might come in. What would happen? Remember what happened at that Amish school where somebody walked in and massacred those poor children? Remember what happened over in Russia where a bunch of terrorists went in there? Does it make sense for teachers to be the last line of defense for those kids in the school?
You know, critics are obviously bashing this, but again, who are we to judge? If the parents of these kids are okay, that's ultimately all that matters here. We haven't heard a whole lot of these parents speak out yet, but someone's got to protect them. They always say that it happens to these schools and you don't expect it. Let's go back to Columbine. Nobody expected it. Low crime rate. Virginia Tech, you mentioned the Amish school. It's never the high crime rate schools, the ones that you expect. I'm okay with this. At least some sort of arming. Maybe the principal, at least a gun being in the building. Maybe not every teacher being armed, but they...
Yeah, I haven't developed my opinion on this yet, because I'm thinking about so many things that could go awry.
You think about your own kids,
the kids,
right?
Like, think about how high school, middle school kids are these days. Some of them, they get their hands on one of these guns, wrestled away from a teacher. Before you know it, then they're holding the whole class hostage. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can think this through, so I'm not so sure where I come out on this just yet.
Well, look, if the sheriff is a half an hour away, something happens, who's going to take over? In a perfect world, the folks down in Harold would hire a security guard who would be authorized to carry a gun. But this is what they say is the next best thing. They're going to, apparently, whoever they decide will carry a gun has got to go through training, has got to be licensed.
That's a whole other thing. Who's going to want to be a teacher? If a lot of people, it's already tough to get teachers. A lot more people probably may not want to be teachers if they also have to be a gun expert. I mean,
I don't think you have to be. I don't think they're going to force anyone. They haven't even said all the teachers would be armed. They haven't even said which teachers would be armed.
Didn't they have security guards at Columbine? I believe they did. And
I don't think they were
nothing.
armed. Yeah.
You can't have a security. This is a 1,000 student K through 12 school. Columbine is 2 or 3 times that size. Well, just the high school itself. This is a very small school in the middle of nowhere. You can't hire a security
guard. All the schools I know of, though, in the New York City area, and there are a few where they do have armed guards, but most of them have security personnel who are not armed.
And this school says that their teachers, you know, keep in mind, these teachers have the student's best interest at heart. A security guard is trained in merely security, where the teachers, their whole lives, have the best interest of their students at mind. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting debate coming up. We're going to have both sides of it.
In the meantime, email us right now. Do you think this is crazy, or should we let them carry the guns? Email us right now, friends@foxnews.com. Crazy or carry?
Okay, there's this new study out today.
A North Texas school district will now allow its teachers to carry guns to class. The question is, will this create more problems than help solve it? Joining us right now is Gail Fallon, president of the Houston Federation of Teachers, and David Thweet, the superintendent of the Harold, Texas School District. Good morning to both of you.
Morning. Good morning, Steve.
All right, David, let's start with you. Why'd you come up with this?
Well, Steve, we're looking at school safety as many people are across the nation. We're right on US 287, 500 feet from the highway. We have state-of-the-art security, and we've looked at everything we can to protect students. But the questions we had to ask, hard questions, were what happens when a known entity comes into the school, such as in Pennsylvania, and what happens when somebody comes in the doors, as in Virginia Tech?
Sure.
What happens when somebody's in the school? We can't control that environment unless we have something to defend ourselves.
So you are going to allow teachers or administrators to carry guns to school, provided they go through the training process and get a permit and stuff like that. What's the reaction been from the parents there?
Parents have been fine. At least our community has supported this 100%. It passed unanimously.
All right. Now, Gail,
with our board.
Gail, you're down in Houston, which is a couple hundred miles away from Harold, Texas. What do you think about this?
Well, frankly, we think it's a horrible idea, because what you're essentially doing is you're putting a lot of weapons around children. And children have a natural curiosity. You have to secure those weapons. I know my members. I mean, they have trouble keeping track of their purse, and that's generally where a woman stores a gun. And our worst fear is either someone pulling that weapon, panicked, and accidentally injuring a child, or a child who's curious getting his hands on it, and it's a really neat toy that he's playing with until someone dies. And one death is inexcusable.
Well, Gail, what do you make of David's argument that they're in the middle of nowhere? They're 30 minutes away from the sheriff's department. If something happens, somebody in the school is going to have to do something.
You know, our view is hire a security person. My understanding is he has one school. We have a lot rougher neighborhoods and a lot better chance of someone walking in. We hired security. And that way, we have one person on campus who's armed. And that was a major debate at our board as to whether to allow a commissioned, uniformed, armed police officer there, because the question was, what happens if he pulls that gun and fires and the bullet hits the wrong person? How do you ever explain that to a parent?
David, what about that? What about not just setting the money aside and trying to hire a security guard?
Yeah, Steve, we did consider that. We looked at several options. Philosophically, we looked at it very long and hard, and this is what we came up with. Why hire an individual who is not from education and put them in an education surrounding? Why not take someone who is very trainable, and teachers are very trainable? And I understand what Gail is saying, and we share her concerns, but these guns will not be off their persons. And these guns and these people are going to be trained, very trained as well or better than probably the security officers that she's speaking of in her own district.
Well, Gail, the other thing is Texas law backs them up. Texas law makes this doable.
Well, and from what I've heard from some of the legislators who have heard this idea, enjoy it briefly, because Texas law changes when the legislature meets. And the reaction has been that it's a loophole that's going to get plugged.
We thank you both for joining us. Gail Fallon down in Houston and David Thweet, they're the superintendent of Harrold, Texas. Thank you very much.